Hey guys, Conky Reviews here for my review of Chapter 3 of Kingdom by Yasuhisa Hara. So, we open up right where we left off on the last chapter, with Shin thinking he's speaking to Hyo somehow. Shin is a little dumb, honestly, and we see that throughout the story, but, this is probably his most, reasonable take for one of his dumb moments. But when he walks in there, the little boy corrects him and says that his name is Sei, which we actually seen that in the last chapter. It was stated by that assassin who arrived at the mayor's house in Johto village when he was looking at Hyo's dead body. I think he thought it a Sei. But yeah, so then we switch over and we see the assassin again, but this time he's walking through the remains of the bandit camp or village, whatever that thing is, from last chapter. He's walking alongside the river, near all the people who are knocked out and stuff. And a couple of dudes come try to walk up on him. Not a good idea, because one of them gets their head sliced clean off. I don't even think he looked at him. He just swung his sword and the dude's head was gone. And he just kept walking. So then the bandits, they actually noticed, or some of the other ones that weren't the one who got his head chopped off, obviously, but people who were behind them, they noticed that the assassin is wearing all red and black. And they connect that with a family of assassins who've been assassins for 200 years or so. And they call him a Shukyo, which, as the manga goes on, we'll learn more about them, but all you really need to know right now is that they're an assassin family, or clan, whatever. But yeah, so basically this dude is a complete and utter monster, and he's going to be a ridiculous challenge for Shin. So then it switches back to Sei, and Shin, and Sei asks him if he is Shin, and Shin seems kind of taken aback, how the hell does this guy know my name? This guy randomly in the middle of nowhere. Well, I guess he's not in the middle of nowhere because he went there, but and he proceeds to start freaking out and asking how this random dude knows his name and why he looks exactly like Hyo. So then Sei hears something outside and mentions this will have to wait for later, and suddenly a blade or a sword swings through the tent or whatever they're in. I don't know. It's like a tent or a shack with wooden sticks inside of it, I guess. I don't even know. But he swings through it, completely destroys it, and Sei is standing and Shin is knocked onto the ground. Funnily enough, he's buried under it, trying to get up really quickly. And it's that Shukyo assassin is standing there absolutely ridiculously menacingly, and tells Sei he has nowhere left to go. And he drops the bombshell that boy Sei is actually the king of Chen, a Sei. Learning this info, Shin, he is just completely shocked. And then the Shukyo also reveals that Hyo was the king's body double. And so that's kind of a huge reveal that that's the whole reason why Shobunkan in the first chapter was looked so shocked when he saw Hyo for the very first time, because he just sees this boy that looks exactly like the king. So his first option is, let's get this dude as a body double. This is an amazing idea. Shin then becomes extremely angry and starts yelling and berating the king, and that the king used Hyo as a body double and just basically tossed his life aside so that he could survive. And then the Shukyo laughs and he says that he's gonna let Shin kill the king, but he'll cut the king's head off later. And then Shin's like, okay, yeah, I'll kill him, but I'm gonna kill you first. Which honestly is just badass. I love Shin so much. Um, so now he can finally get his revenge that he wanted in the previous chapter, but got punched out of it by the little man. But yeah, so now they're gonna start fighting. So he draws Hyo's blade, and they begin to clash. So as this battle's kind of like drawn out, the Shukyo assassin guy, in his head, he's kind of like praising Shin, and he's kind of comparing him to Hyo when I guess they were fighting, and he's saying that like his strength and speed, they're all pretty similar to Hyo, but Shin's potential is way higher than what Hyo's was, which is pretty interesting to think about. Like if Hyo survived, like I mean, would he just have stayed a bodyguard, I guess? Or I mean, not a bodyguard, but a body double for the king, just for his entire life? Or, I mean, I guess he might have. I don't know. But so then he proceeds. He just confidently states that Shin is 5 years too early to win this fight, and he raises his sword up and just brings it down onto Shin, which he blocks. But then he proceeds to get kicked right in the face, and he just flies straight into the shack, the broken down shack now. And after taking that kick, Shin, I mean, he basically lost his will to fight. He's just sitting there thinking like, "Oh, I'm screwed. Like I'm not gonna win. I can't win this. If Hyo didn't win it, like I'm not gonna win." And then this is when we see the king spout his first little inkling of leadership. He says, "Don't think at all. Just keep the idea of avenging Hyo in your mind." And then we see Shin get angry and says that he doesn't have the right to like talk about Hyo. But I mean, obviously it lights a fire in Shin, even if it doesn't light the fire that Shin thinks it does. It does cause him to get back up, and he starts fighting again. But he before he starts fighting, he starts kind of berating the king again and talking about how the king's quarrels with his brother are, I mean, they're literally meaningless for like regular people, specifically for Shin and Hyo, but I mean not for Hyo obviously because he was there, but I'm assuming he's just referring to like regular people, and how they just really couldn't care less who is actually on the throne and who's king. And upon realizing that Hyo really is like dead and gone, Shin is just, he's sent into a blind rage, and literally like you can see his pupils or his like eyes turn white, which is always a terrible sign for your opponent when your eyes turn white. But first, before the fight continues, we get another flashback that shows Hyo and Sei talking specifically about Shin. And Hyo is kind of bragging about Shin, about his best friend, and how even though they are similarly skilled, Shin is stronger than Hyo is. And his reasoning is that if there's some stalwart enemy or some unstoppable object in the way, Shin would be the one who would be able to defeat that person, which is it's an amazing ability, and Shin definitely proves it time and time again that he's able to adapt to his enemies while he's fighting them. He will get like become stronger in the fight and adapt to his opponent as he's fighting them. So when we return to the fight, Shin, I mean, he's going into his rage with his white eyes, and he starts slashing at the Shukyo, and he manages to get one slash on the Shukyo's arm, and it causes a little bit of bleeding. And so obviously the Shukyo gets extremely angry, and then he starts going crazy against Shin, and he cuts Shin a ton. He's just like covered in slashes on his arms and legs, and I think even on his face. And then Shin retaliates again, and he cuts the Shukyo just as many, if not more times than the Shukyo cut Shin. And then as he goes to attack, the Shukyo goes to block, and then Shin disappears and reappears above, like completely in midair, above the Shukyo assassin, and he slashes down with crazy strength and speed and just completely obliterates the sword that the assassin is holding, and cleaves through him, just straight from his shoulder, like all the way down to his waist, I swear. And it's just such a good end to that fight. It's so good. I really love how it's drawn, especially whenever he's like in the air. Like that part is it's so hype. But yeah, so that's gonna be the first half of this review done, guys. So if you don't want to be spoiled, definitely head out, because now we're gonna have our little spoiler discussion. So have a nice day. Like, comment, and subscribe, please. And see ya. Alright, guys. Now it's time for the second half of this review, where we're going to have a little discussion about some stuff. So the first thing I want to talk about is Sei's leadership. And that scene where he's telling Shin to not think, and to think about avenging Hyo. So, I mean, this is just the very first time we see just how serious Sei is about, like, leading people. He just has this ability to inspire people around him, which I'm not necessarily sure if he really inspired Shin, but he did shake him out of his stupor that he was in. But, I mean, this skill just continues growing and growing for Sei in the future. And it's so cool to see it. Like, I mean, specifically, I'm thinking of a specific moment when Sei and Shin are in Sai, the city of Sai. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna spoil it, just in case some people are in here and they actually haven't read it, but yeah. Honestly, I think Sei might be my favorite character in the series. I just love, specifically, like, how he's written. Like some of his speeches, honestly, I think most of his speeches I've, like, teared up at or cried to. They're just so well written, and the art going with them is always so good. Another thing I want to talk about is how Shin, he completely just obliterates this Shukyo assassin. I mean, Shin really didn't take any real damage from this guy. And as you'll see later on, like, when he's going against a tough enemy, Shin will usually take some type of crazy damage in his first bout with the enemy. But this time it's just, I mean, he gets cut, like, what, a tiny bit. It doesn't affect him really. And then he just completely obliterates the dude in one hit. It's just ridiculous, man. Shin is crazy strong, and his ability to just adapt to fighting is just amazing to see. And it also shows, like, just how, like, it's not just his ability to adapt. Like, him and Hyo did spend years and years dueling each other, and you can tell that they aren't just like little friendly spars or whatever. Like, they dueled because they want to become great generals, obviously, but, like, he has so much experience. Like, his experience already probably is past the average soldier in the wars later on that you'll see, the regular little pawn type dudes. So there is another scene in this chapter that really it's very important for later on. The part where Shin starts talking about how they don't care, like, who's sitting on the throne. So last chapter, whenever I was talking about how Hyo dying was like the spark that lit the fire inside of Shin and caused him to really start pursuing his like the path to become a general. And this was that spark. Well, I guess it was just a spark for Sei, because he's already had many sparks in his life, as we'll see later on. But I think this is a very important spark in his life that really sets him on the path to being able to understand his citizens and truly helps him in becoming such a great leader in the future. And the last thing I want to mention is, I actually had to look this up because I really wanted it to be true, but so whenever he uses that move, when he jumps in the air, like after the guy dodges, the assassin, he blocks, he goes for a block, and then Shin just disappears, and then he's above him, like right behind him. It's the exact same move that Shin uses against Hoken in the Battle of Sai, at the end of that battle, or siege, when Hoken and Shin are having a duel. Shin dodges his attack, or maybe, I don't know if he dodges, I think he does dodge it, and then he appears up in front of, or like above, and I think to the side of Hoken, and then slashes him right across the face. And I remember, I guess we'll get to that eventually, but that moment is so fucking badass. Oh my god, I can't wait till we get there. The whole Coalition arc is amazing. Ah, man, this manga is so fucking good. It's legitimately my favorite. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it, guys. Please, hope you enjoyed it, and come back for the next one. And have a great day.